Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. My guest today, Tracy Hernandez, is a seasoned pro with nearly 30 years in revenue operations. She's done it all, from product marketing to building high-performing sales teams. Today, she's here to break down the silos in marketing, sales, and customer service and share how unified data can drive company success. We're going to talk about overcoming data inconsistencies, optimizing tech stacks, and turning operational challenges into growth opportunities. Tune in to elevate your revenue operations game right here on StrategyCast. And don't forget to check out the most recent issue of the StrategyCast newsletter on StrategyCast.com. Just like this episode, it's full of inspiration and a ton of ideas that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I'm thrilled to have Tracy Hernandez join the show today. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I am fantastic. We are, oh my gosh, I love this topic. We've been talking about RevOps on the show, and I think it's one of those very, very unique intersections of company success that a lot of people forget about, quite frankly. They think they're doing RevOps, but they're not. And so Tracy and I are going to talk about, we've got a flat economy. Has it impacted your revenue acceleration? And then if you're answering yes or no, maybe it's even, has it slowed down revenue acceleration? We're going to talk about how revenue, sales, and marketing should be working together to really create the company's value when it comes to growth. Before we get there, Tracy, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I am so excited to be on StrategyCast. So I was an operator for almost 30 years, and I've had roles in product marketing. As an individual contributor, I was a product marketer, and I did some professional services, actually implementation work. So I worked directly with customers and got a really good sense of what they want, what they need. And then I had a CEO who said, I think since you're good at working with customers, let's have you carry a bag, and you can have a quota now. So I built a few sales teams. And when you connect all the dots, what's really kind of cool about that is there's just not many people who've really gone the entire span of what is go-to-market. And so what I got really passionate about was finding the problems in the middle and the gaps between the functions. And that's what I do now is I work with leaders in a revenue operations and revenue enablement capacity to help them understand, how they can close those gaps and turn those kind of negatives into growth stories.
Yeah. Is there a common thing that you say to yourself going into a new engagement? I'm going to be surprised if I don't see this as a problem.
I think, I think everyone kind of grew up in this state, especially over the last 20 years. So most of the people who are in leadership got their leadership chops over the last 2 decades, right? And I'm in B2B. I'm in .com, so I'm a .com baby. And so typically what you see is, you started out in marketing, you grew up in marketing, now you're a CMO. Or you started out in sales, you grew up in sales, and now you're CRO, and so on and so forth. You started in the customer organization. Maybe the customer organization wasn't even called that at the time. It may have been a support organization, but somehow it evolved through, became the customer, and now you're the chief customer officer. But people grew up in their own kind of domains. And I'm shocked to see the teams work and play nice together.
Yeah.
Other words, I think what happens in most is that people like to do what they know and they got good at what they know.
Mhm.
And that's what they've been valued for. That's what they bring to the table. And so they use what they know. And a lot of times the real opportunities are about tearing those walls down and becoming a team.
Yeah. I'm kind of giggling inside because we as an agency have had that happen gazillions of times. But reflecting on the guests that we brought on our show, I would say 9 out of 10 of them would completely agree and say it truly is, an issue. I mean, so human ego, territory, all those sort of things get into the way. A Rev Ops becomes a methodology, a very, very important operational methodology, system, whatever however you want to refer to it, that I believe, aside from the core importance of truly understanding how revenue operations should be deployed within a company, it can unify the different teams, whether it be marketing, product, sales, finance, combined to have more purpose to work together.
You know, like what you're saying just speaks to me so much. And let me kind of tell you why. So if you go back to where we started and you think of it almost like you have to make a mental shift, right? And that mental shift needs to get away from I have to swim in my own lane to I have to find a common ground. I have to find a way to connect. Revenue operations, their first role should be the truth teller of the organization. They should be the one that is closest to the data from all parts of the organization, the one that understands the North Star metrics of the organization and figures out how to plot its course. There's revenue ops that's gone wrong. And I'll start with, where do you go wrong? When you make revenue ops, about being I'm going to go create a report for you, and you've got a bunch of executives hurtled around the desk, just, throwing the next report to build. And now what you've got is a bunch of data jockeys who are building a stack of reports that no one really understands, and the data makes no sense. You didn't really accomplish anything with it. You underutilized your RevOps
I,
team. That's not the way to use a RevOps team at all.
do you think that that people just become, that they go in with the bias because they are territorial and they don't want anyone telling them anything that they should know or don't know?
Nobody wants to, especially if you're an executive.
Yeah.
You got to where you got because you did something right
Mhm.
along the way. And so the last thing you want is some data jockey nerd coming over and telling you what to do or going around the rest of the company and getting in your business. So
Mhm.
I have a better suggestion for where to start. I think that a lot of the argument really starts with, well, my data says something different than your data does,
Uh,
right? And executives are really untrusting. I mean, how many of us have gotten, you've gone into a meeting, you get hijacked, right? You're like, hey, I was looking at this sales report. My sales report says that we sold XYZ during this period of time. And somebody else comes in the room and says, my report, I pulled this straight out of Salesforce. And my Salesforce report says something different. And my data is right. And what a freaking waste of executive time.
yeah. Well, so therein lies an issue. Before you finished your sentence, I was thinking, is it an interpretation issue?
It
Um,
could.
yeah, it could be, but therein lies an issue of, facts, Jack. We've got disparaging reporting mechanisms in place that need to be unified.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So what happens a lot of time is you get, your sales ops team, and you've got your MarTech team, and you've got, your finance ops team, and so on and so forth. And because they're all separated out and they all have their own tech stacks, and now you've got disparate data. And so what you're saying is we've got to kind of find a way to unify. When you get that unified team of RevOps, and you can make them the truth teller of the organization. Where is the information? How do I get the information to marry up? Now you can start with something that's a really smart report. And so
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of creating, just start with one, because this is the first time through as a mission, but I call it a unified revenue double click. And what I mean by that is you've got to get one look. In my world, it's ARR and NRR, but you got to get one view of revenue that everyone can agree on. And if product wants to look at it, did we sell more of the big product or the little product? They can double click down and they can see their view of the world.
Right.
Or if marketing wants to see the attribution of a campaign and how did that convert to create the revenue, which ones are more successful, they should be able to double click the top number and get to the data underneath. Same thing for sales, where's my revenue coming from? Same thing for customer if you've got renewal or expansion data that you're dealing with. But all of it, if you can create one unified report, then what that really means is you've taken a bunch of disparate systems, you've probably put it in a data lake, you've created a definition methodology, you've done a lot of things. All of this sounds like a bunch of operational mechanics, and behind the scenes it is. If you use your RevOps team as your unifier, as your truth teller, now instead of going into your meeting and arguing about whose sales numbers are right, now you can make decisions.
Yeah.
I think,
And
yeah.
it saves so much time. How often do you see, I mean, I love like this is just simplifying it so much, but how often do you see that people out of the chute are just measuring too many data points?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
The more systems you have, the more reports you make. Everyone's got the power to create reports now, so everybody has a report, and everybody's report is gold.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to, and that's why I'm saying start with one. I think revenue is the one that one's the easiest one to start with. That's kind of universally, obviously important, but there are others. We can look at measuring like customer acquisition cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you
For marketer, for marketing to really understand where they should be focusing.
that's what your budget, if you're a marketer, that's what your budget should be made from.
Yeah.
So, right? So if you care, so if you're lowering your CAC, then you should have more surplus budget that you can invest in new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Going back for just a second, because I can just imagine our listeners right now thinking, new systems are such a booger to install. They just are. And it is like the one major pain point that anytime there is any type of technical deployment, and we work with a lot of SaaS clients that help with that. But there's still finance saying, well, we want to stay on QuickBooks. Well, we've got an API for that. Well, but we don't want it to be a part of that. We just, so there's just all these sort of things that, get into the mix from the mindset of what it takes to get a unified system working on for every department within an organization. And with that said, I've never, not once, seen a SaaS solution deployed perfectly. So
No,
that all parties are happy.
no. But one of the things, if we kind of go back to, what's broken, and really this is about getting everybody on the same page. Everybody has their pet system. Everyone has a system that they had to have for some reason. And half the systems have overlapping function. Fun fact, did you know most startups, not even scale-ups or grown-ups, most startups have a MarTech stack that has over 23 products in it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, hello.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
And that seems like, I mean, if you're a little itty bitty company, that seems like a big number. Now imagine you're like a grown up, maybe you're an IPO level company, right? How many do you have in your tech stack? 70, 80, 90? Every time you have an API and one of those products upgrades, something breaks.
Yeah.
So, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast. I think a smarter way to do this, if RevOps then has dominion over the tech stack, and we take a smarter, more mature look at it and we say, okay, well, let's evaluate in terms of where we're getting a return on our investment.
Right.
right? Now that freaks everybody out because now I'm going to lose something in the tech stack. Something's not going to provide a return. But now what can we do? Well, to your point, we can either make better deployments of what we have and get more meaning out of some of the other resources that we have that just need some additional investment, some additional TLC, right? Or, maybe we can free up funds so that you can open a new market or go up market or do something a little bit more strategic because you're spending a lot less time spending money on stuff that really isn't providing value to the organization at all.
Yeah.
Or if you really do have to have all gazillion pieces of that tech stack, then maybe you know that to hold it all together with baling wire and duct tape, you're going to have to invest in a team of people that can keep that updated and maintained so that it's not a source of pain.
Yeah.
People don't like to talk about that because that doesn't sound like growth to them. But I tell you what, it can certainly sound like churn on the back end.
Yeah. Which,
Don't do it right.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for allowing me to go into that pit of information because I think it is important to lay the groundwork there. So we're talking about how to create alignment within the organization between all the departments. We've talked about the measurement of revenue, the double click and what you can do with that, and then really diving into the CAC. Talk to us a little bit about pipeline.
Yeah, so that's another. So if I kind of think about like what are my top 3, 4, 5 reports that, if you really have a good RevOps team, one that's not just let me go create reports, but let me create unification through my reports, and we create this kind of mentality of a double click, then yes, you should have one for revenue. You should have one for CAC. You should have one for pipeline. You need to know where your pipeline is coming from and how much your forecasting is a common problem. And that forecasting needs to be expansive. It needs to not only be the pipeline for your customer acquisition, but if you're in a recurring revenue model, it's equally important that you can forecast accurately your expansion sales and that you can forecast accurately your renewals. Do you know what your renewal rate is? All of this goes into your revenue equation. And if you're only caring about your top of funnel activities and your top of funnel pipeline, you're missing a whole lot of the picture. So again, it's a GTM, not a marketing report, a GTM level, lens that you're putting on the business, and you're using RevOps to create that GTM lens to
Yeah.
your business so you have a better understanding of where you're weak and where you might miss forecast.
I love this, and I think it makes all the sense in the world. Brand has got to fit in at some point, especially with younger brands, and awareness being one of the primary goals because nobody knows who they are.
And in fact, I'm going to expand what you said. I love this. So I'm having fun. But I'm going to expand that because yes, it's going to be your it's going to be your awareness. It's going to be your reputation management. It's going to be, how am I doing on social? All of those external marks of brand. It's also going to be your NPS scores. What do your customers think of you? It's also going to be your employee scores.
Wow.
Your employees are out there probably jamming out on Reddit or Twitter, I mean, X. It's going to be any number of these things. And all of those things together, it's almost like you want a 360
Yeah.
view. So all of these things work in concert together in order to create the demand that you need in the market and the reputation that you need in the market so that eventually you can convert all of that to dollars.
Do you have an example of a brand that you feel has just got all this working on all cylinders?
I do. Let me tell you, I met the head of RevOps for LinkedIn.
Wow.
And LinkedIn, I think, LinkedIn, everyone knows, is a leader in social. They know who their market is. They know who they're going after. But what was so impactful to me when I met her was she said that they put together an initiative list and they go through and they measure everything that they work on in terms of how do they go to market to create revenue, all of the initiatives around that as a go-to-market team, and then they evaluate it on 2 fronts. They evaluate the merit of what they're trying to do based off of the reach. Will that help them reach new markets and grow. And then second, the lift it takes to get there. It doesn't, if you did all this great brain work and you've got this awesome strategy, but you can't figure out how to operationally ready the ship, how to build it into comp plans, and that just struck me so much that this is a team that is forward thinking, and this is why they're growing and expanding, and they're using technology in the smartest ways to help them because they work as a team across the stack and they make measurements that are, these are the initiatives that will pay off, that I
Wow.
will get ROI out of, and that we can execute. And
Yeah.
if we can't do all of those things, then maybe we need to have an executive conversation about the merit of those projects.
Well, it sounds like with their GTM strategy that it wasn't just go to market, they reverse engineered operationally everything that needed to happen to enable that GTM approach to be successful. And I think that's really what we're talking about. And this is the sweet spot of Rev Ops, is all of that reverse engineering to get us to the point of success.
If you're RevOps, I think, you've always got to think in terms of a maturity curve, right? If you're just starting with your RevOps team, if you start with one data scientist or, one sysadmin, you started in a good place, right? But as you become a more mature organization, now you want to get a RevOps organization that can paint a GTM level lens. And then eventually you want to get to a much more mature place where your RevOps team is actually doing strategic things for you. So for example, what if your RevOps team could run a once a year or every half a year kind of project where we grade our revenue? That's a strategic project. And what
Right.
I mean by that is now you've got the truth tellers of the organization. They're looking at the data every day, and you say, of the revenue we have, is 70% of it coming from my ICP or not? Are we doing the marketing's out there trying to, get our target market to adopt and come on board, right? Is sales actually selling it? Are these the guys that are staying around with us? Are they renewing our business? Is 70% of our actual dollars in our business, is it coming from what we're trying to accomplish? Or are we just doing dirty deals and getting the growth metrics,
Right.
right? And these are the people that I think if you kind of ignite the RevOps team with more of a strategic mindset, instead of everyone's fear, we were talking about the fear of, being an executive and having someone come in and tell them what to do. I think it's kind of like my internal consultant. Can you help me grade the revenue? Are we doing what we set out to do? Are we using our tech stack right? You can kind of get the return on several types of investments that you're trying to make, in order to figure out, how do I work efficiently as a company?
Yeah. How often do you see Rightfit customers are something that we talk a lot about with our clientele, because the one of the examples that you just shared is bringing a wrong fit customer into the pipeline. You sign the contract, and 60 days later they're not happy and they go away. So all that energy has been put in place to just meet a number, not really create lifetime value
That's
of
right.
clientele that can really help the organization grow. There's a tendency to just do that, to meet numbers. What
Mhm.
does RevOps do to change that mindset regarding quality of right
Yeah.
customer?
Yeah, look, I think, if you're talking, it's the last day of the quarter and you're the sales executive and it's take the deal or don't take the deal, you're going to take the deal because you're going to hit your number. That's what sales does, right? That said, I think where RevOps can play differently is, it's really hard to fix problems when they're an emergency, right? When you're down to the end of the wire, when you're down to the wire. Instead, what you want to do, like look at where we are right now in the year. A lot of people are going into fiscal planning.
Yep.
Right. Now is the time that you can do that. For example, grading report. You can say, hey, do we realize, well, hey, sales, why are you down to the wire? What's going on? If instead of in our meetings, we're spending time debating whether the reports are right or wrong, we can have a conversation within, say, a quarterly internal business review. And we can say, do you realize that only 50% of our customers are our target ICP?
Yeah.
Why is that? How can we change? What are we doing differently? And we can have a conversation and make decided actions against that. We can build that into the plan going forward. I think that's more the mentality of where we want to go with RevOps, right?
So we just don't want to pick on sales. Where does marketing mostly get it wrong, do you think?
Top of funnel.
Yeah.
Top of funnel, hands down. So marketing, for forever. I've never met a marketing team. It's all about the leads. I got to get my leads at any and all costs. I have to get leads, even if I have to kind of shank it and get lower quality leads. I'm going to hit my lead number.
Wow.
Right? Marketing needs to be on the hook for dollars, just like sales is on the hook for dollars, because the quality of your leads matters. But as well, it's not just prospect leads; it's customer leads.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm a big advocate that you have to have, I almost think of it like let's borrow from the discipline of product management for just a minute. They roadmap out the development of a product, right? And part of their roadmap is going to be features, and part of it's going to be maybe tech debt, you
Yeah.
know, infrastructure, grungy stuff. Well, what if in marketing you change your thought process and you start dividing out your initiatives, and some of your initiatives are around getting your top of funnel and your prospects, the leads for that, but part of your roadmap is really centered around driving demand for customer expansion. So your customers want to get more. In my world, it's licenses. So upsells and cross sells. You have other products within your portfolio. You want to drive adoption for those. That's fair. When the board's sitting around and reviewing your financial statements, that money counts too. So marketing has to have a lens for both
Yeah.
prospects and customers.
This could be a total rabbit hole and probably another show. But I agree that awareness is, typically where the game is won or lost. What we're finding is that the budgets are typically not what they need to be, top of
Mm-hmm.
funnel, to create the right fit customer for their, mid funnel or to acquisition, that there's just not enough money to get to enough of the potential market area in order to make an impact, especially early on.
Yeah.
Those budgets can change later stage. Does revenue help determine that budget so that marketing can be successful?
I think finance ultimately works with the board in order to figure out what the budget should be. I think RevOps specifically can have a hand on where we're using the budget, like provide that lens on where are we using it effectively versus ineffectively.
Mhm.
So, and they can help, I think, go back and say, hey, marketing needs more here, right? Or they can say, hey, marketing, do you realize that you're getting a whole bunch of the leads, but the leads aren't converting right? Or so on and so forth. I think as the truth tellers in the organization, they almost have more credibility because it's not just the marketing's over here whining for more budget. It's the lens of I've looked at all the data, I've scrubbed all the data, I know what the data's saying, I understand where the sources of pain are, and perhaps they can figure out where to help find some other budgets so that the entire, even want to think of it almost like a revenue factory, right? So that the factory operates more smoothly. Woe is, I'm going to say something really controversial, like if you're in sales, you want to throw more bodies at getting more sales, right? Like, well, maybe we should hire a few fewer bodies and invest that to the top of funnel if that's what the data says.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of not just intuition to read the data correctly, but I think it takes someone, again, that truth teller who can really look beyond the lens of marketing and sales to really understand where the brand can be effective. You've got this really cool methodology that you deploy called a journey map, where magic moments of impact, I love all the terms that you use, can be, really provide incredible insights. Talk our audience through that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, one of the most interesting, I'll just be really direct. One of the hardest problems I've ever had in my career. I'll keep it kind of surface level, but I got thrown into a situation where all of a sudden I had to handle, say, 50% of our customer base, and we had a churn problem. And frankly, a lot of the churn problem was operational in nature. We just couldn't get the bills to the customers fast enough. And so it was some stuff like that it like mind blowing. Really, we're going to lose customers because we can't bill them. That's just silly. But as well, when you started going through and you understood, like peeling back, okay, these are the customers that are churning. I got to spend a lot of time looking at the data itself. Why are they going away? And so I kind of developed this methodology that if you want to get the front end of the funnel right, you actually start at the back end. And you figure out why they're leaving. Why didn't they stay? What did we miss along the way? And you have to get in and peel your data back and break it into segments. Maybe they left because they went out of business. Maybe they left because they didn't find value in your product. Why didn't they find value in the product? Why did they buy in the first place? And you've kind of got to go through and very systematically list that out. Use the word impact as kind of the inverse of value. So if value is what marketing and sales, talk about upfront, impact is what you deliver on the back end. That's what they're like two sides of the same.
People first, you know what I mean?
That's right. And so if you bought a product to solve a particular problem, can you find 5 points in their journey with you, post-sale in their journey, that are magical, that prove that you created impact, so that when you get down to that renewal discussion, you can bring that up and say, remember when, and you've got a whole little laundry list that you can go back and say, hey, we've had this magical journey together. Of course you're renewing with me.
Yeah. And
so and marketing can enable that. Marketing can build case studies that support it. Marketing can build video vignettes. They can create communities around these magical moments together. I mean, this is what marketing, when we talked about splitting your time in marketing, and some of it goes to prospect and some of it goes to customer. Gosh, this to me is exactly what marketing should be focused on, that directly impacts revenue. And some of those magical moments can even be used as campaigns to sell, so that you can create expansion opportunities with your customers along the way. If they're happy, they're going to be expanding.
Yeah, I love that. It's so funny. We just renewed one of our big softwares, and I didn't have one call between closing the deal last year and the renewal, which was sent to us with about a 15% increase, which of course we said no to and negotiated back to the same price point we had last year. And it's really very interesting. That is such a great lesson for our listeners right now. And it's really to create those magical moments of glue, of stickiness.
That's right.
So that clients don't leave. That's some incredible advice there. And I love it. As you were talking through all of that, I also am, just spinning from the standpoint of, back to my earlier budget question. And Is there a rule of thumb that you've seen within organizations on the split of marketing budget within each stage of the funnel?
I think it's so unique for each business. Yeah, I hate to sound wishy-washy like that. You know, what I would really do if I wanted an answer to that is, you know, I would go to a lot of the large investment houses and PE firms have their own centers of excellence where they build their own best practice data by industry.
Mhm.
And so you should have a board that has an expectation of what you should see in your market for the right breakdown to try and compare, you know, Procter and Gamble to
A startup.
Microsoft to a startup, you know, it's to a real estate firm. I mean, like it's just not it's not going to be an apples to apples, but I think there are ways that you can within your industry find the right knowledge houses that say these are these are the benchmarks you should be working against.
Yeah, and I think there's just a lot of trial and error there as well. In the retail space, we talk a lot about first timers, loyalists, and switchers. And
Mhm.
you know, once we get a first timer in, you know, how do we move them down your traditional sales funnel from a B2B standpoint? Couponing, you know, new product introductions, you know, there's all sorts of ways to do that. And one of our very sophisticated retailers were able to measure that. I mean, if we see that we might be having a little bit of a flat month, we're able to interject immediately a special promotion, you know, on a given day, and it helps meet goal.
So where you're going, I love where you're going. And I recently bumped into just a great company that I'm going to plug. They don't know it, but it's called Infinigrow.
Mm.
And they're an AI company. And really what their goal is, and they've got several goals, but the one that really kind of struck me is that they're working with their clients to figure out how to create a deal 360.
That's
And right. And so what they're doing, they're an AI company and they're taking all the multiple databases with structured data, but they're also going to all the unstructured data sources and they're figuring out how to pull that together so they can say, what is the first touch of awareness all the way through renewal? And
wow.
what are those moments so we can pull the levers? I think we're still a little bit away from that total holy grail. But the point is the technology's there now, and it's trying to figure out trial and error how to use it and start taking those steps towards getting there. And the closer we can get there, then you're right. It's not a foregone conclusion. We can say it's a low month. Let's pull this lever.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm glad to see that other companies think that way as well. Little pat on the back here. So we've run out of time. Final, what haven't we talked about that our listeners and our viewers must know to really create the synergy within their RevOps, you know, and between all the diverse teams to have great collective outcomes?
You know, I think that the answers are within. And I'm a really optimistic person. I think that, you know, most leadership teams have the expertise. They know where the problems are in their business. They just need a way to get started.
Right.
And right. And a lot of times it's let's do an audit together and let's figure out an agreed upon place to start. Let's do some workshops together and let's have that conversation about how we start, where we're going to start, how we're going to leverage and bring RevOps in as a partner at the table so
Mhm.
that they can be a strategic player and not just, you know, your short order chef.
Yeah.
Um, right. And so I think that's really where, you know, where we want to be. I think we can chart a very new path forward and find a lot of revenue that was leaking rather than just feeling like we have to add another initiative to the table.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. So many words of wisdom today. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Well, anybody can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. But as well, you can come to my website. It's www.saaslumen.com.
Tracy, thank you so much. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me, Lori, at StrategyCast.com. And while you're there at the StrategyCast website, sign up for our newsletter. We'd love to not only share the great news of guests like Tracy with you, but other tidbits along the way that will help you sell to more people more often. Tracy, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.